I was 13 when my brother Ethan disappeared. One night, he just vanished. No signs of forced entry, no struggle. His room was exactly the same except for his bed. It looked like someone had been lying in it just minutes before. My parents assumed he ran away. The cops looked into it, but nothing ever came up. No leads, no witnesses, no goodbye letter, just gone. After a few months, Mom and Dad stopped talking about him. It was like they didn't want to remember, but I did, because something felt wrong. Ethan wasn't the type to run away, and the way my parents acted, like his existence itself was fading from their minds, was terrifying. And then, 1 year later, I found his diary. It was hidden under his bed, covered in dust, like no one had touched it for years. The first few pages were normal, school drama, video games, dumb jokes. But then, about 2 weeks before he disappeared, his handwriting changed. The letters were shaky, rushed, almost like he was writing while looking over his shoulder. I flipped to the first weird entry. Mom and Dad don't remember me today. They keep calling me the other one. I frowned. What did that mean? I kept reading. My bedroom door locks itself at night now. Something breathes behind it. I felt cold. He must have been messing around, right? But the next entry made my stomach twist. I looked in the mirror this morning. My reflection didn't move. I shut the diary. No way. But deep down, I felt something stir, a memory I couldn't quite grasp. I forced myself to keep reading. The final entry was written the night before he disappeared. They told me I don't belong, that I was never born, but I remember everything. That's where it ended. The next page was ripped out. I sat there, my hands shaking. What the hell did he mean, never born? And then I noticed something. The handwriting in the last entry was slightly different, like it wasn't even his, like someone else had written it for him. I ran downstairs, clutching the diary. "Mom!" I shouted. "Did Ethan ever act weird before he disappeared?" She turned to me, looking confused. "Who's Ethan?" My heart stopped. My dad walked in, frowning. "Is that one of your friends?" I felt my skin crawl. They didn't remember him. No, worse than that. They acted like he never existed. I ran back upstairs to Ethan's room, but when I reached for the doorknob, it was locked from the inside, and then behind the door, I heard breathing. Slow, heavy, right against the wood. I backed away, heart pounding. That's when I noticed something else. The mirror in the hallway. It reflected everything. The walls, the carpet, my pale, terrified face. Everything, except the door to Ethan's room. In the mirror, the door wasn't there, like it had never been there at all, like Ethan had never existed. And then, something knocked from the other side. When I opened the door to Ethan's room, expecting the familiar chaos of a teenager's space, clothes on the floor, posters on the walls, the faint smell of old pizza, I was met with something different. It was empty. The bed was gone, the dresser was gone, the walls were bare. The air smelled wrong, like it hadn't been breathed in a long time. I took a few steps inside, my shoes clicking on the floor. Everything was eerily still, and the emptiness in the room was almost suffocating. The oddest thing? It felt like there was a presence in the room, a weight pressing down on me. Then a sound, a soft whisper, barely audible, but it was enough to make my hair stand on end. "They don't remember me." I froze. I turned around quickly, looking for the source of the voice, but the room remained silent. My eyes darted to the far corner of the room, and that's when I saw it. A shadow. It wasn't a person, but something more, something wrong. It was tall, thin, its form shifting and wisping in and out of focus. But what caught my attention the most was the face. It wasn't Ethan, but it was. A pale, distorted version of him. The eyes were too dark, too hollow, and his lips were stretched into a smile that looked like it was physically painful. "You remember me." I felt my chest tighten. I couldn't breathe. I tried to run, but the moment I turned, I realized the door, the way out, was gone. The walls, they were moving, closing in. I felt the room shrinking, the air growing thicker, suffocating me. The figure didn't move, not at first. It just stood there, staring at me with those black eyes. And then, slowly, its lips curled into something even more grotesque. I was never born. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What did that even mean? I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The air was so thick now, it was like my lungs were full of concrete. The figure stepped closer, closer. I pressed my back to the walls, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. The walls were closing in, getting smaller and smaller until I could barely breathe. I felt like I was suffocating. And then, out of nowhere, I woke up. I shot up in bed, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. It had to have been a nightmare, just a bad dream. But as I sat up and rubbed my face, I felt something was still off. I looked around my room. The walls were the same, but the air felt colder. And my door was open. I know I closed it last night, and then, on my nightstand, Ethan's diary. The pages were the same as before, but something had changed. I flipped to the last page. There, written in a hurried, frantic hand, were the words, "I remember everything." My hands trembled as I read it, trying to make sense of it all, but I couldn't. And that's when I heard it, a faint knock, software slow. But it was coming from the other side of the door. I stood up, my heart in my throat. The knock came again, louder this time. But it wasn't the knock of my parents. It wasn't anyone I knew. I crept toward the door, my hand shaking as I reached for the handle. I hesitated. The air felt like it was pulling me in, suffocating me again. I pushed the door open. The hallway was dark. And standing at the far end of it was a figure. A tall, thin figure with a face I couldn't make out in the shadows. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I couldn't even move. I stared at the figure, my heart beating in my ears. And then I saw it. The figure's face was now in full view. It was me, not Ethan, not anyone else. It was my face. But it was distorted, twisted, as though the skin was pulled too tight over the bones. The eyes were hollow, and the smile, oh God, the smile, was too wide, stretching past where a mouth should be. "You never left." The words came from its lips, but I didn't hear them. I felt them. I knew them. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. And then the figure stepped toward me, slow and deliberate, until it was right in front of me. Its face was inches from mine. Its breath, icy cold, touched my skin. "You shouldn't have remembered." And then I woke up. For real this time. I was lying in my bed, but I wasn't alone. The room was empty, but I could feel it. The figure was still there, standing in the corner, waiting, watching. The last thing I saw before I closed my eyes again was that twisted smile. It was mine.